year is 1906. A powerful earthquake has leveled San Francisco. You must do a podcast, year by year, event by event. I'm afraid it is the only way to save humanity.
Hello, Phil. How are you today? Do you know where we're off to?
Yes, I'm so excited about today because we're going to California. I think we're going to be going to Disney World. We're going to be going to Universal Studios.
Well, we're going to California, but it's not going to be the most exciting. Actually, well, it will be exciting. It could be a little bit dangerous, though. A bit shaky, a bit quaky.
Oh.
Back to 1906
Violin.
in San Francisco.
Time
Mother Nature strikes back. Or strikes. I suppose not back. She's always striking somewhere, particularly in America. Dangerous place. But in April 1906, there was this 7.8 magnitude earthquake.
Ooh.
Pretty much near the center of San Francisco.
Yeah.
And it struck very early in the morning, or reasonably early in the morning, around about 5 o'clock, 5:15 a.m. The first quakes were recorded. And yeah, a big one. That was felt all the way to Los Angeles and into the south of Oregon. And the relatively new city of San Francisco was, destroyed, or a lot of it destroyed.
It had only been recently renamed, hadn't it? San Fran.
Had it? I didn't know that. What was it called before?
I was about to quiz you. What was it called before? Hang on. What was Francisco?
I assume like a Spanishy name.
Yeah.
Although San Francisco is still pretty Spanishy. Saint Frank.
Oh yes, of course. Or Francis, if you like.
Francis, that's it. I don't think there was a Frank. But...
Well, it's short for Francis, but formerly Yerba Buena. Oh,
Yep.
But anyway, I'm going way back. It was not 1847. It was called San Fran, so I'm obviously a bit lost there. That was before the discovery of gold, which is obviously what put it on the map.
Indeed, Gold Rush City. Quite a small one, I guess, when it was Yerba Buena, but by the turn of the century, there were 400,000 odd people there. And unfortunately for them, many were left homeless, of course, after the earthquake struck. I think over half of them were homeless. 250,000 were left homeless as the earthquake just flattened their buildings. And the buildings that weren't flattened were swept up in a massive fire. There's a map, quite a nice map, that shows the extent of the fire damage particularly, and that was what caused the main destruction, actually, not so much the shaking, but the firestorm that took place afterwards.
With a great fire raging out of all control in its aftermath, leaving hundreds of thousands homeless.
It stretches really from the sort of northeastern tip of San Francisco down into what is now the Mission District, up to Nob Hill on the western side.
Well, I'm not just going to let you get away with saying Nob Hill, am I, and not saying anything.
Go on then, get it out of your system, Nob Hill.
Sounds like
my second favourite
Nob
hill that we've covered so far.
Yeah.
After Big Kill Devil Hill, but yeah, Nob Hill was hit by the fire quite badly. All of Chinatown and the downtown district, really. All of the densely populated areas, they were pretty much levelled by these out-of-control fires. So, if the quake didn't get you, the fires would, unfortunately.
Which seems like a good moment for me to share my screen of this footage of it, if you'd like to have a little look.
Go on then. Ooh, it's a
By the time
long documentary, isn't it?
Yeah, I watched
over an hour of earthquake footage.
And it's very dull voiceover, but there's some good some good pictures. I've skipped to
At
sort
about
of
9
earthquake.
a.m., someone living in the Hayes Valley section kindled a fire to cook breakfast, innocent of the fact
I'm
that the
picking
quake
up the
had
World's
damaged
Fair.
their chimney.
I guess that's
This
not what
was
we
the
want, is
result.
it?
No,
By
World's
noon,
Fair
the
after.
ham
Well,
and
it
egg
sort of
fry,
ends in the
as
World's
it
Fair,
tasted
like it's a
enough,
happy
was on its
ending
way to claim
or
a
something.
good part
Like
of
this
the
documentary, the narrative is like,
There
oh,
was only the will
but then they built a
and
new
the
city
example
in a
of the
World's
people
Fair.
themselves.
I mean, well, sure, we'll come to that.
Here was manifest and indomitable.
But yeah, it looks
and
pretty bad. And then
impetuous spirit
obviously
that,
from
in the
about
wake of disaster,
1523, you can
built
see
an
the
entire
horrors of the
city
fire,
and the World's Fair
the firestorms.
from the ground up.
That was one of the most wonderful fairs they'll ever have anywhere.
Oh, that place? That's a nice place.
I mean, were they aware of how quakey the area was until this point? I wonder.
I assume so. It's one of the most active fault lines in the world. So, presumably they had pretty good knowledge that there were earthquakes. I assume this was the biggest one for a number of years, though.
Yeah.
And it's probably like anything before, when it was just a gold rush town, there'd be a few quakes, but people were more worried about gold and not really bothered if like small settlements get flattened. It's only once you get a big quake in a big city now that people begin to sit up and take notice. And probably also it coincides with the rise of photography. We've talked a bit about this, but the news cycle was really kicking off and in full flow at this point, the early 20th century, and you get journalists coming with the cameras to record everything. We got some early footage and lots of photographs on the record, so people were really, they couldn't help but have this disaster thrust down their throat in the newsreels of the day.
And lots of looting as well, of course, in the aftermath. Although apparently, like, the firestorms helped with that. I think it got to a point where no one was really looting because it was there was nothing left. It had all been like vaporized.
Yeah, you have to be quick if you're a looter. You've only got probably a matter of hours before the fire carries off.
Nevertheless,
what you might want to loot.
I'm looking at a proclamation by the mayor. The mayor. I think it would be a mayor in America rather than a mayor.
Mm-hmm.
Proclamation by the mayor. The federal troops, the members of the police force, and all special police officers have been authorized by me to kill any and all of those found engaged in engaged in looting. Yeah, that's basically the gist of it.
Thought you were going to say engaged in lewd behaviour. That would be a bit harsh.
No, I'm sure.
Yeah, engaged in looting.
I'm sure that was already on the statutes, but there probably wouldn't have been many stripping off in a firestorm to flash their knob hill.
So one of the reasons, according to me, and me alone, I haven't found anyone else proposing this, but one of the reasons why the fire was so bad was because the fire chief, the San Francisco fire chief, was killed almost instantly while asleep in his bed by the actual quake. He was crushed. So one assumes that the fire response was very unorganized. If Chief wasn't there, no one could find Chief. No one was giving out orders at the top.
Yeah,
and also big problem was there was no water to put out the fire because the earthquake ruined all the pipes and all the sort of fire hydrants and the plumbing basically of the city. So even though there were firefighters, they really struggled to get water to put out the fire.
It was believed many of the modern office buildings could withstand the flames. Most prominent, the Call Building, one of America's first skyscrapers. The call caught shortly after 10:30 a.m. It burned from the top down, its elevator shafts acting like flues. A few firemen were trapped on the upper floors and incinerated.
And I'm reading about him now. Dennis T. Sullivan, he was called, fire chief.
He? I didn't know his name. I just knew him as San Francisco fire chief.
Old Dennis T. He was a blacksmith when he joined the fire department. And in 1903, he had proposed an emergency water supply system for the fire department to use water from one or more of the reservoirs. he proposed it. It wasn't. Construction didn't begin until 1909, 3 years after the quake. So yeah, there you go. I think you're quite right. It probably wouldn't have helped that the chief sort of perished. Chief engineer. It must have been an absolute nightmare, which is what I say about basically every one of our events of the 20th century.
Well, at least this nightmare is not caused by man, which is what a lot of the nightmares are caused. This is, as I said earlier, Mother Nature showing that she can still do a good bit of damage.
Of course, but it sort of is the man bits, isn't the man bits are what I'm not having a go at man this time, but the man bits are what makes it deadly, isn't it?
Sure. Yeah, if it had been just an earthquake in a wood,
be fine.
Would anyone have even known? If an earthquake happens in a wood or forest, no one's there to feel it, does it actually happen?
Exactly, or did the bears just get sucked down into their hastily dug toilet pan holes?
I did read something about someone who was sort of baffled when he saw a cow's tail just sticking out of like a crack in the earth. So presumably the cow had been going about its bovine business and then was swallowed by the earth, and then that fissure in the earth closed up just to leave a little cow tail poking out.
Blimey. It seems as well that it was one of the big ones in like modern earthquake theory. It sort of produced a lot of data and lessons learned and a wealth of scientific knowledge derived from the earthquake. That's apparently why it ranks as one of the most significant of all time.
Okay.
Yeah.
History repeats itself. History repeats itself. History repeats itself. First as a tragedy, then as a farce.
The most terrible thing I saw was the futile struggle of a policeman and others to rescue a man who was pinned down in burning wreckage. The helpless man watched it in silence till the fire began burning his feet. Then he screamed and begged to be killed. The policeman took his name and address and shot him through the head.
Oh, God.
That's not all. Yeah, there's plenty of stories like that. People just crushed. Another eyewitness describes how all of a sudden we found ourselves staggering and reeling. It was as if the earth was slipping gently from under our feet. Then came the sickening swaying of the earth that threw us flat upon our faces. We struggled in the street. We could not get to our feet. Then it seemed as though my head was split with a roar that crashed into my ear. Big buildings were crumbling as one might crush a biscuit in one's hand. Ahead of me a great cornice crushed a man as if he were a maggot.
Oh, I've got one here. There was a deep rumble, deep and terrible, and then I could see it actually coming up Washington Street. The whole street was undulating. It was as if the waves of the ocean were coming towards me, billowing as they came.
Goodness. Yeah.
That was Gordon Thomas.
I did go to Natural History Museum the other day, and they have an earthquake simulator. I think from the Kobe earthquake in Japan, like 90s or something. And that was very, very underwhelming. Very mild.
Does it just shake?
Yeah, it wouldn't even shake, just sort of wobbles. You're on a wobble platform and you're in a shop and some produce shakes a bit, pots and pans clatter. I thought, if this is an earthquake, what are people worried about? But then I started reading about the 1906 San Francisco earthquake, and it seems deeply traumatic and, yeah, just something you would not want to experience at all.
No.
Time trippers, are you receiving? Time trippers, hello?
Do you have any idea what to do in an earthquake, Phil? If an earthquake does strike London, what would you do when you felt the first tremors?
I think I'd stand in the doorway, I guess. No?
No, you shouldn't do that.
Oh,
I was reading up, and that is something you just, rubbish idea.
Yeah.
Doorways are no longer what you should do because apparently they're not particularly strong.
No, I didn't think it was. I was only going to go in it because I've read somewhere.
I always have heard this advice, but it just seems like rubbish, doesn't it? A doorway's quite thin.
Yeah.
And it's not like a cartoon where the whole of the building collapses around you and the doorway survives. No, rubbish idea. Whoever came up with doorways, they should be ashamed of themselves.
Is it like a thing you should do in a special earthquake-built house with special doorways? Or is it just rubbish?
If you've got a special doorway, perhaps, yes. Like a wide, reinforced doorway.
Yeah.
But generally, doorways, just avoid the doorway.
Oh, for God's sake, because I mean, our flat in London, it feels like it's going to fall down anyway from subsidence, so without an earthquake. So
it does have a big crack that you showed me the other day.
Yep, exactly. Should I have run out the house? Probably.
No, you've failed again. You should not run out the building. If you're in a building, stay put. Don't run out. So no doorways, no running out.
Just stay.
You want to get away from the windows and move to like the centre of the building. Ideally, get under something, like a table.
But this just sounds like the doorway is all over again.
I mean, being under a table when a building's collapsing is better than not being under a table. I think that's the general consensus here.
Yes.
Or the thinking behind the table advice.
I'd have to just go under my computer.
I've heard also get in the bathtub.
Why? Why are you doing that? I mean, if you could crawl under the bathtub, fine. But why are you just going to sit in the bathtub while the ceilings collapse on you?
I thought about this as well, and I assume it's because if the building collapses, and this will only work if you've got a bathtub on an upper floor, you sort of ride the bathtub down through the collapsing building and then, like, heroically out into the street.
Like Last of the Summer Wine.
Exactly like Last of the Summer Wine, yes. Your bathtub acts as your vehicle, escape vehicle, escape
actually the
pod.
Advice? That you go and ride down in a bathtub?
No, I just imagine this is how it will go. Like, why else would you be in the bathtub?
I don't know
because it's
why.
like a sort of little pod, isn't it? Escape pod.
I mean, it's... was the bathtub advice correct? Real? And then you developed it into the riding out, or did you just introduce it yourself?
It's only something I've heard in passing, like anecdotally. If there's an earthquake, get in a bathtub, and I've put the rest of it together in my mind about why it might be good.
Because it feels like if you're going around telling people not to stand in doorways, like you're some kind of self-proclaimed earthquake expert, but then you're like, oh, but you can just get in a bathtub.
Much that once was is lost. We are times again, for I can see what is to come. We are times. Much that once was is lost. Go back, learn the lessons. It is the only way to avoid catastrophe.
Nope, this is not little guys. Hang on tight.
Okay, so we've got Universal Studios here.
Yeah. If you skip to a minute in, is this better than the Natural History Museum?
Oh, it's infinitely better, yeah. This actually looks like a proper earthquake experience. Yeah, that would be upsetting, being stuck underground in an earthquake with a truck of gasoline coming through the ceiling and exploding. That's about the last thing you want to happen.
Exactly, the lights are all flashing. We've got loads of scared-looking tourists.
I think this Universal Studios earthquake experience is much more accurate of what it might be like to be in an earthquake.
Yeah, they used to make rides like this. Oh, look at that water! Ah!
Alright.
And nowadays it would all be CG and you'd put on glasses.
Yeah, they really did go hard on the actual, like, physical effects back in the day. Back in the day, like 20 years ago.
I spent a lot of time just watching old theme park rides on YouTube.
That was your research for this. How to get into the mind of an earthquake survivor. That must be like a theme park ride.
I actually watched that whole really boring documentary, but I turned it off when it got to the exposition.
That was one of the most wonderful fairs they'll ever have anywhere.
Oh, that place? That's a nice place.
1906, people were talking about government overreach and how it was an affront to declare martial law, and perhaps it shouldn't have been declared, or it was declared a bit quickly and taken up a bit enthusiastically by some of the soldiers.
Probably just
who were shooting on sight pretty much. Any looter, the police issued a shoot to kill order.
Also, I've got a quote here, actually, of that. There were, to be sure, several on-the-spot executions of looters the first day. Surely, says Gordon Thomas, a curious denial of the constitutional right to be judged innocent until convicted. Others conceding that what was done was illegal have tried to rationalise the killings as no more than what might be expected of hard-pressed soldiers doing a thankless job. But the citizens of San Francisco were under equal stress, and their panic may have caused them to do many things which would have appeared criminal under normal circumstances. Perhaps they deserve understanding more than the soldiers. So I suppose no one really knows what to do, so everyone overcompensates, in the soldiers' case, by executing looters. Gordon Thomas very quickly goes on to give a quote talking about the victims of looters. No man actually owns a fortune. It owns him. Especially in those days when you've got to keep it all under your bed and shit, probably. Anyway, there you go.
It's funny, yeah, I think a lot of people did actually literally keep it under their bed, because I was reading a couple of eyewitness accounts, and the first thing they do is grab their sack of gold, usually under the mattress or under their pillow, and run out into the street with it. It's
like our, what's-his-face and the cheese, Samuel Pepys, burying his cheese in the Great Fire of London. It was an inexpensive cheese.
I imagine it would quickly melt. Have to bury it deep.
Yeah, he did. I think he went and got it later, maybe.
Oh, did he?
I can't remember. I might have made that up. Look that up.
There was actually one officer who shot a horse, a thirsty horse, for looting, because he claimed it was drinking precious water from the fire hydrant. And yeah, he got carried away and popped a cap in its dome, its horsey dome.
Oh, that's horrible. That really affected me emotionally then. I wasn't expecting it to. I was going to be like, yeah, well, you would. And then I was like, oh, God, the horse just trying to drink, being shot. Oh, it's these nightmare scenarios.
Brigadier General Frederick Funston, who was commander of, the barracks of San Francisco, immediately ordered the mobilization of his troops and sort of took command of the local relief and law enforcement. So he was the one behind a lot of this martial law. In the aftermath, the media were calling him the man who saved San Francisco. But upon a little bit of digging, he's actually got quite a contested legacy. Mainly because people were saying, well, he didn't have the authority to declare martial law, and he just basically became a little despot during the immediate aftermath of the earthquake. He was also very keen, perhaps overly keen, you might say, to dynamite things. Have you any idea why he might be keen to dynamite things?
Did he think it would clear fuel, starve the fire of fuel or something stupid, but it actually...
Exactly, yes. When the fire is spreading, these quickly spreading fires, if you just blow everything up in the fire's path, it will be starved of fuel and it will hopefully burn itself out. Unfortunately, he went a bit dynamite happy.
I thought you were going to say that.
Started just, ordering people out of their homes. Young soldiers come with a load of dynamite and just blow it up. And there are people saying, but look, the fire isn't even here. It's miles away and you're dynamiting my home. Maybe not miles away, but, far enough away that they've got a good chance of saving their residents. But no matter... anyone who was objecting was usually sort of grabbed by the scruff of the neck, dragged out of their home or business, and their residence/building was indeed dynamited. He caused more fire to spread.
It's that thing, isn't it, as well, the crisis comes and you sort of do what you're trained to do. But if the military isn't yet trained in helping with this sort of thing, all they really know how to do is shoot people and blow things up. etc.
Indeed.
You see it a bit with the British and partition and stuff as well, where they're just using the same, and all the stuff we've talked about, Boer War and all that. Anyway, yeah, no. I've got a quote here saying it was bedlam, pandemonium, and hell rolled into one. And question for you, Johnny: what is bedlam, pandemonium, and hell rolled into one? It's bed-hell-demonium. Carry on.
Okay, so we got bed-hell-demonium breaking out, military dynamiting left, right, and centre, fires sweeping in, people crushed under buildings, horses being shot just for having a sip of water. It is bedlam-demonium.
It's bed-hell-demonium. It's bed-hell-demonium. It's bed-hell-demonium.
Hurry, time trippers. Finish your mission and return to the mothership for your debrief.
If, as they say, God spanked the town for being over frisky, why did he burn his churches down and spare hotlings whiskey?
Nice. So there must have been people like it to this day immediately blaming the disaster on human immorality as they perceived it.
Yes, indeed. Because San Francisco did have a bit of a bawdy reputation as a city, like just coming off of its frontier town days, its gold mining days, where there was a brothel every few hundred meters and saloons and whatnot. It still had that sort of legacy. And there were indeed people, when this earthquake and firestorm is hitting, sort of decrying their fate in the streets, saying, it's God's vengeance come to strike us down. And there are some amusing little eyewitness accounts of people just getting really fed up, really just had it up to the neck of someone saying, it's end of days, you brought it upon yourself, and sort of going up and slapping them around the head and saying, shut up, we don't want to hear this.
Amazing.
The earthquake has subsided, the tremors have gone, the fire is smouldering. What do you do now if your home has been destroyed?
Did they sort of set up shanty things, tent city type businesses?
Yeah, exactly. So you have these earthquake refugees, and they're packed into every public square and park and open space, even the cemetery. You got the big Golden Gate Park where 50 to 90,000 people were set up in these shanty towns, these tents. And for a while it was quite open and friendly, because you got everyone sort of trauma bonding. So different classes and ethnicities are all crowded together and sort of standing in line for food. Of course, this doesn't last.
The Blitz spirit.
You've got the ugly bias in American society that we discussed a little bit with the Native Americans last time around, and that will definitely crop up again in relation to civil rights, where sooner or later the white working and middle class and upper class, they don't want to rub shoulders with the Chinese and the Irish immigrants, so they're quickly, particularly the Chinese, quickly segregated.
So when they say they sort of, this earthquake was a turning point where they then rebuilt the city to be earthquake-proof and made use of new science and technology, that I assume that probably did not extend quite so much to the people we're talking about, the Chinese and so on.
The city developers, they all swept into the area that was Chinatown and rebuilt it. It was located on some of the most valuable property. If you look at a map of San Francisco, Chinatown is right in a prime area by the coast, between Pacific Heights and Union Square, which are now very upmarket areas of San Francisco. The city had been rebuilt and was a pretty modern city. It having been mostly destroyed, or the old part of the city was destroyed in 1906, so when they did build it back, it was a bit like a phoenix rising from the ashes, and was much better, much more modern.
And they then, of course, had a big exposition and invited the world to come and see what they'd done, and sort of turned a disaster into sort of positive thing. Is it the Panama Pacific International
It is,
Exposition?
yeah. I don't know why it's called the Panama Pacific. Maybe because Panama Canal had been just very recently opened round about then.
Yeah, so it'd have been to show that
I think
off
it was
as well.
1915, this big exposition where they're saying, look how amazing US is, look how we rebuilt San Francisco from this terrible devastation, look how we crushed Mother Nature. Or rather, Mother Nature couldn't crush us and we build up stronger. Then they show off Panama Canal and said, look how we dominated Mother Nature here.
That was one of the most wonderful fairs they'll ever have anywhere.
Oh, that place? That's a nice place.
So, Johnny, what did you bring back from the 1900 earthquake?
From 1906 earthquake, I brought back actually a really big item. I'm surprised it fit. But it's a firefighter's steam pump that is usually towed by horses. I couldn't fit the horses, so it's just the steam pump, but it's like a steampunk style wagon with big wheels and a steam pump for water. So if I have any little fires around the house or in the garage, I'm actually thinking about keeping it in the garage.
Keeping it in the garage,
cramped.
yeah, I thought so. Great.
But if you need some water, if you need a hose down, fire up the steam pump.
It's very attractive. It is like something at Disney World, and it's really coincidental that you haven't brought a horse back, Johnny, because my item is the horse. The horse we should say that was shot, but it wasn't shot.
The thirsty horse.
Yeah, I rescued the horse before it was shot, and I've brought it back in the garage, so we can link the horse up to that and just sort of, pimp it up around town.
That's brilliant. I mean, the horse is going to be hard pressed because I think it usually takes 2 or 3 horses to pull this, but it should be grateful that it's saved from being shot.
Yeah, better a long, slow, grinding death than this being shot for this horse.
Okay, great. Well, steam pump and dobbin.
Choo choo.
Eddie put his pills and snaps. Eddie wears a jockey hat. Now